My name is Alaric. I'm 44 years old and work as an IT specialist in Seattle. Life, until recently, felt stable, predictable maybe, but stable. I was married to Isolde for 15 years. We met at a coffee shop downtown. She was vibrant, artistic, a whirlwind of color in my otherwise monochrome existence. I was instantly smitten. Our life together was good, or so I thought. We had a comfortable home in the suburbs, 2 cars, a dog named Pixel, the whole 9 yards. We weren't the most adventurous couple, but we enjoyed our quiet evenings, weekend hikes, and the occasional dinner with friends. The first crack in the facade appeared subtly, almost imperceptibly. Isolde started spending more time on her phone, always angled away from me, her fingers flying across the screen with a nervous energy I hadn't seen before. She'd laugh softly, then quickly shut it off when I entered the room. When I asked what she was doing, she'd brush it off with a casual, just catching up with friends. Then came the late nights at work. Isolde worked as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm. It wasn't unusual for her to have deadlines, but these felt different. She'd leave the house looking stressed, her eyes red-rimmed, and return hours later, exhausted and distant. I'd offer to make her dinner, but she'd decline, saying she'd already eaten. The warmth I once felt radiating from her was replaced by a cold, impenetrable wall. I tried talking to her. "Is everything okay, Isolde?" I'd ask gently. "You seem different." "I'm fine, Alaric," she'd snap, her voice sharp. "Just stressed. Can you please not make a big deal out of everything?" I backed off, telling myself I was being paranoid. Maybe she was just going through a rough patch. Every relationship has its ups and downs, right? But the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. It was like a low hum of anxiety that vibrated through my entire being. The real unraveling began a few weeks later. I was working from home, and Isolde had left for work early. Around midday, I needed to find a file on her computer. I knew her password, we'd always shared them, so I went to her office. As I sat down, I noticed a small, locked box tucked away in the back of her desk drawer. Curiosity and that persistent gut feeling got the better of me. I found a small screwdriver in the garage and carefully pried the lock open. Inside, I found a stack of cash, neatly bundled in a small, sealed envelope. My heart pounded in my chest as I opened the envelope. Inside was a one-way plane ticket to Belize, departing in 2 weeks. The ticket was in Isolde's name, Belize. Why Belize? We had never talked about going to Belize. We hadn't talked about going anywhere, for that matter. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Was this some kind of surprise trip? But why keep it hidden? And why a one-way ticket? Then I saw it. Tucked beneath the plane ticket was a small notebook. I opened it, my hands trembling. The first page was titled Escape Fund. Below, in Isolde's handwriting, was a list of dates and amounts. Small withdrawals from our joint account, all carefully disguised as everyday expenses. It added up to a significant sum, enough to live comfortably for quite some time. I flipped through the rest of the notebook. It was filled with scribbled notes, ideas, and plans. Plans that didn't include me. Plans for a new life, a new beginning. And then I saw a name. Caspian, Caspian. The name echoed in my head, a discordant note in the symphony of my life. I knew a Caspian. Caspian was Isolde's friend from work. The one she'd mentioned a few times in passing. The one I'd never met. A wave of nausea washed over me. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place, forming a picture I desperately didn't want to see. I slammed the notebook shut and shoved everything back into the box, my hands shaking so violently I could barely close the lock. I stumbled out of the office, gasping for air. I needed to calm down, to think rationally, but my mind was a chaotic mess of questions and doubts. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, replaying the events of the past few months in my head. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the emotional distance, it all made sense now. She was planning to leave me. She was having an affair. Isolde came home late that evening, looking tired but strangely lighter. She smiled weakly as she walked through the door. "Hey," she said, her voice casual. "How was your day?" I stared at her, my heart aching with a pain I'd never known before. How could she stand there, acting like everything was normal when she was planning to abandon me? "Fine," I said, my voice flat. "Yours busy," she replied, shrugging off her coat. "Long day at the office." I wanted to scream, to confront her, to demand answers, but I couldn't. I was too numb, too shocked. I needed time to process everything, to figure out what to do next. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the image of the plane ticket and the name Caspian burned into my brain. I felt like my entire world was crumbling around me. The next morning, I decided to do some digging. I knew it was wrong, a violation of her privacy, but I couldn't help myself. I needed to know the truth, the whole truth. I waited until Isolde left for work, then went to her computer. I started by checking her email, nothing suspicious. Then I looked at her browser history. Again, nothing out of the ordinary. Finally, I decided to check her social media accounts. I knew her password, so I logged into her Facebook profile. I scrolled through her posts, her photos, her messages. Nothing. Then I noticed a small, unfamiliar icon in the corner of the screen. It was a dating app, an app I'd never seen before. My heart sank. I clicked on the icon and the app opened. There was Isolde's profile, complete with a recent photo and a short bio. Looking for someone to share adventures with, it read. No strings attached. I scrolled through her messages. There it was, a conversation with Caspian. Pages and pages of flirtatious messages, intimate confessions, and explicit plans. They were planning to meet in Belize. They were going to start a new life together. I felt a surge of anger, a white-hot rage that threatened to consume me. How could she do this to me? How could she betray me so callously, so cruelly? I printed out the messages, every single one of them. Then I closed the app and logged out of her account. I needed to confront her. I needed to hear her explanation, even though I knew it would be a lie. I waited for her to come home, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. When she finally walked through the door, I was ready. "We need to talk," I said, my voice trembling. Isolde looked at me, her eyes widening slightly. "About what?" she asked, her voice innocent. I held up the printed messages. "About this," I said, my voice rising. "About Caspian, about Belize, about everything." Isolde's face paled. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "Don't even try to deny it," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "I know everything. I saw the plane ticket, I read the messages. I know you're planning to leave me for him." Isolde's eyes filled with tears. "Alaric," she stammered. "Just tell me the truth," I interrupted, my voice pleading. "Please, just tell me why." Isolde burst into tears. "I'm not happy," she sobbed. "I haven't been happy for a long time. I feel trapped, suffocated. I need something more, and that something more is Caspian." I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "He understands me," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "He makes me feel alive, something you haven't done in years." Her words were like a knife twisting in my gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After all these years, after all the sacrifices I'd made for her, this is how she repaid me. "So what?" I said, my voice cracking. "You're just going to leave, just like that?" "After 15 years, I don't want to hurt you, Alaric," she said, her voice pleading. "But I can't stay. I need to be true to myself." "True to yourself?" I scoffed. "What about being true to your marriage? What about being true to me?" Isolde didn't answer. She just stood there crying, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and defiance. I couldn't stand to look at her anymore. I turned and walked away, my heart shattered into a million pieces. I spent the next few days in a fog of grief and anger. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't think. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of despair. I called my best friend Ronan. I told him everything. He was shocked and supportive, offering a shoulder to cry on and a listening ear. "You need to get out of there, Alaric," he said. "You can't stay in that house. It's filled with too many memories." He was right. I couldn't stay. I packed a bag, grabbed Pixel, and drove to Ronan's apartment. He offered me his spare room, and I gratefully accepted. I spent the next few weeks trying to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. I consulted a lawyer, started the divorce process, and began the arduous task of dividing our assets. Isolde didn't fight me on anything. She seemed eager to get it over with, to move on with her new life. It was as if our 15 years together meant nothing to her. The divorce was finalized a few months later. I moved into a small apartment downtown, started seeing a therapist, and tried to rebuild my life. It wasn't easy. I missed Isolde despite everything. I missed our life together, the comfort and familiarity of our routine. But I knew I couldn't go back. I couldn't forgive her betrayal. I deserved better. One evening, a few months after the divorce, I received a message from an unknown number. It was a photo of Isolde. She was standing on a beach in Belize, her arm around Caspian. They were both smiling, looking happy and carefree, but something was off. Isolde looked different. Her eyes were hollow, her smile forced. Then I noticed it. In the background, standing a few feet away, was a woman who looked eerily familiar. I zoomed in on the photo, my heart pounding in my chest. It was Caspian's wife. I did a little research. It turned out that Caspian had been married the entire time he was having an affair with Isolde. His wife had hired a private investigator and discovered their relationship. She had followed them to Belize, intending to confront them. I felt a pang off something. Not sympathy exactly, but a sense of understanding. Isolde had been so focused on escaping her old life that she hadn't stopped to consider the consequences of her actions. She had destroyed her marriage, hurt her husband, and abandoned her life, all for a man who was just using her. I didn't know what happened after that photo was taken. I didn't know if Caspian's wife confronted them. I didn't know if Isolde and Caspian stayed together. I didn't care. I had my own life to rebuild. I couldn't waste any more time dwelling on the past. I had learned a valuable lesson. Trust is a precious gift, and once it's broken, it can never be fully repaired. I deleted the photo and blocked the number. I took a deep breath and looked out the window at the city lights. The future was uncertain, but I was ready to face it. I was stronger than I thought. I was a survivor. Years have passed. I've rebuilt my life, found happiness again, and even started dating someone new, a wonderful woman named Astrid who values honesty and communication above all else. Isolde. I heard through mutual friends that things didn't work out with Caspian. She returned to Seattle, alone and humbled. I don't know what she's doing now, and frankly, I don't care. My focus is on the future, not the past. The scars of betrayal may never fully fade, but they serve as a reminder of my strength and resilience. They remind me that I deserve to be loved and respected, and that I will never settle for anything less. It was a painful chapter, but one that ultimately made me a better, stronger, and more appreciative person. It taught me the importance of self-worth and the courage to walk away from toxic situations, no matter how difficult it may seem at the time. To those of you who have experienced similar betrayals, know that you are not alone. Your pain is valid, and your healing is possible. Don't let the actions of others define you. Focus on your own well-being, surround yourself with supportive people, and never lose sight of your own worth. You deserve happiness, and you will find it again. Trust me, I know.